Hey guys, welcome back to The Click, episode 6, and we are both back in our studio finally after all this mess. So we're getting back to work, and I know a lot of our local businesses are getting back there as well right now, and I think everybody's extremely anxious. So here in North Carolina, we've got a lot of restrictions that are lifting tomorrow, actually. So
phase 1.
Yep. And we're seeing, and I think that's retail up to 50%. So I think we're going to see a lot more just action in general.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, lately, the past couple of weeks, it kind of looks like nothing, has changed. Everybody's out and about. But anyways, I think everybody's excited to get back. I know we're excited to have our team back here in the office and you back in the podcast with us here. So without further ado, let's get started with episode 6 of The Click. We'll jump right into our headlines, and I'll pass it over to my co-host, Alaina.
Awesome. Well, we're going to start off with Google again, and they removed 2.7 billion ads, and that's up from 2.3 the previous year. So that's huge, and they're doing this in efforts partly because of COVID, but also that what they're trying to do is decrease this malicious activity from advertisers and publishers. So the targeted areas include passport ad scams, which I thought was pretty interesting, that's one of their biggest problems. And then the other was trick-to-click ads. So just ads that aren't legitimate and people trying to really just scam other people.
Passport ad scams.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
So what it is, it's just people saying that they're a passport agency and they're going to help you get their passport. People click on the ads, they put in all their information, and they are stealing their identity.
Wow.
So make sure you're clicking on the right ad. And then this actually goes into another initiative that Google's doing, and they announced that they're doing their advertiser verification program beyond political advertisers. So before it was just for political advertisers. Now it's going to be for everyone. This is going to come out in phases over the next few years. But really what it's going to do is that, so when you scroll over that advertiser, it's going to say where their account is set up and then just if they are legitimate. So I think this will really help. It really aids in this malpractice of ads, I think.
So Google searchers are actually going to see that when on a search result page when they hover over an ad.
Yeah, which I think is great. And I think from any advertiser perspective, I think it just legitimizes us as an industry. Being able for the consumer to scroll over and know that that's a legitimate business, that ad that they're clicking on really is 10% off or whatever the offer is. I think that'll really aid in click-through rates, aid in just, like I said, the industry in general.
Yeah, absolutely. That adds that authenticity factor that is often missing in those. So that's cool.
Yeah, and they did have it, like I said, for political advertisers. They first launched it in 2018. So obviously it's doing well, but I think just extending that to all advertisers across the board can only just help their services to succeed.
So are they still banning any updates on just the overall banning of coronavirus related ads?
They're just doing a lot of, they're monitoring it. So they really ramped up during this time. They really ramped up their ad process. And that's something too, is that, we've gotten disproved of ads, it happens all the time. But really they're just honing in on it. They're making sure that every link, every publisher, every platform, every landing page, everything is legitimate and what it's supposed to be. But no mass selling still. You can't do an ad for anything like that.
I wonder what that looks like on their internal team though. With everybody, I'm pretty sure that they're all still remote for the most part. I'm sure they have a small team internally that they're keeping, but to be able to monitor, I know a lot of that's automated, but still there's still a lot of manual eyes on it that have to happen, right? And click-throughs and making sure that the content's all matching and whatnot. So they're still, with everything going on, they're still putting a lot of effort into that. So that's great for everyone.
Yeah, and people will start seeing this information beginning this summer. So it'll start shortly. So I think it's great.
Very cool.
And then Google also, they came out with their May 2020 core update.
Another update, another SEO update.
And that last one was in January, so only a few months ago.
Yep.
This is the second one of the 2020 year, and whenever Google updates its search ranking algorithms, it means that your site can do better or worse in the search results. So it's really important to note.
Yeah, I think it's, anytime that these come out, and that's why we're talking about it, it's important just to look at your search results and your rankings, see what's happening. Absolutely. How are you fluctuating up and down because as we all know, they're very discreet about what they release within the update. Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of information on this, like most of them. So really the only thing that they kind of talked about was just reiterating quality content. And at the end of the day, what they're always trying to do with these updates, for anybody that doesn't know, is they're just always trying to make sure that when you search for something, you're getting the best possible result back to answer what you're looking for. So
answer the question.
Right, answer the question, or whatever it may be, the product or service that you're looking for. So they're just always trying to make sure that people are not manipulating that, and that's what we've seen over the years with so many black hat related SEO tactics that people do to try to cheat those algorithms, and they're just constantly trying to battle those people that are finding those little nuance workarounds and to help their sites rank better. And we see it all the time. And we'll see a site that's got, you'll look at it and you're like, oh my God, how did all of a sudden they jump up here? And you go through and you look at it and they've done all these things they shouldn't be doing. And usually within, a few weeks, it'll get flagged and it'll be removed or sent into the deep web and to never be found again. So really, again, I mean, this is happening over the next couple of weeks. I think they're rolling this out to everybody. So it's not a jump on now and see if anything has happened to your rankings, but kind of watch what happens over the next week or two to see how you can adjust. Where did you fall down? If a page did fall, assess that page, assess the content. It doesn't mean that you intentionally did something bad or wrong in Google's eyes, but you need to assess that page and see, okay, why did this potentially get flagged, and what do we need to update here so that we can bring it back up in the ranking? So again, just focusing on quality content as a whole.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's important overall. It's something we've been honing in on, especially during this virus, is quality content. You need to assess your messaging, make sure you're talking to your consumers, the right audience, everything. So it all
listening
goes back
to them too.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So this kind of goes into what we were just talking about, corporate company culture. It's something we've talked about heavily, I really think, for the past few weeks. And I really wanted to talk about it today. And just about the huge lessons I think that we can learn from this crisis, and looking forward to making sure that corporate culture is assessed and we're making sure that our employees and our clients are taken care of.
Yep, definitely. So there's a lot of companies that are doing this in a variety of different ways, and it's always kind of that fine line that businesses have to walk. And I think about this a lot from my perspective, from an owner's perspective of, obviously you're trying to make sure that the business is doing the right thing fundamentally from a financial aspect, to obviously keep the doors open and do what you're supposed to do and pay your employees and keep the business running and remain profitable, all of those things. But then the whole other side of that is just as important is your team, and how to make sure that you're balancing the right approach and doing the right things through all of this, which so many companies have experienced, like just a sudden, complete stop of revenue, right? And in some cases, I mean, it just totally dried up out of nowhere. And so looking at that and trying to make sure that you're planning and being strategical to make sure that the business survives, but also adding into your strategic plan some empathy about what your employees are going through, because everybody's experiencing something, and obviously if your revenue dries up and there's nothing to do, and it's like, well, hey, how do I keep paying these employees? You want to do that. How do you do it? How do you allow them to work remotely to remain safe, and just kind of a new overall environment of moving forward. So there's a lot of companies that are doing a variety of different things right now with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just one of the quotes I pulled from this Forbes article is, "Our shared human energy is what drives organizations," which I thought was crazy. And especially during this time where everything's virtual, everything's digital now, And I think in the future, it's going to continue. I think that e-commerce is going to continue to thrive. But really at the core of it, it's what we are. It's the energy that keeps us going. And I think you can also just look at businesses in general that are thriving, or businesses that, like we talked about in the beginning, are embracing this, are talking to their employees, are making sure that everyone is all in and that they're ready to kind of weather the storm. And I think that businesses who took that advice in the beginning are going to come out in the next few weeks stronger on the other side.
Absolutely. Definitely.
And an example of this, were you going to?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Is Volvo. So I was going to go into our next thing.
What are they doing?
Just the huge effect. So the automotive industry has taken a huge, I don't want to say plummet, but they've really felt the effects of this. And particularly in sales have been down for 41% in March compared to the previous year. And that's nationwide, just with shutdowns and everything. So that's huge. 41%.
I'm sure they're anticipating that probably going to be even higher for April.
Yes.
I think GM just had their numbers released a couple of days ago, sometime this week, and somehow they squeaked out a profit, but revenue was way down.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, they just, the point of the article that I read was just like, they expect this to be, when the April numbers come out, they expect it to be much worse than the numbers that we're talking about right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then they also note, so this is what talking about Volvo, that they noted the most significant drop would be, just like you said, in April at 60 to 80% below what was initially forecasted, which is huge.
Yep.
So even these big corporate businesses are feeling the effects that you never thought it would. Everyone needs a car.
Yeah, and I think from when we try to localize that a little bit, right? I mean, we were talking about kind of the behemoths in the auto industry from a corporate standpoint. Think about all the locally owned and operated dealerships for these, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, those are the ones that are,
really,
really hurting. And think about, all the sales and service staff and admin stuff that they have. And there's just, it's extremely difficult for them to find a way to continue forward when they're not selling cars like that, right? I mean, we know a lot of how the auto industry works and how many, it's all quota based on how many cars that you sell and the incentives that are given from the auto manufacturers to those dealerships. So I know that they're all working together with that, and so Volvo working with their individual dealerships and GM and everybody else, they're all understanding of that. And back to what we just talked about with empathy of, hey, obviously we can't just keep things moving forward with the same way that we operated before, because this is everybody. It's not just that one shop, in Wyoming that is not doing well, and hey, they collapsed and fell. So, we've seen a lot of these automotive dealerships adapting, trying to adapt very, very quickly, and I'll give a lot of them credit for. We saw that very early on in March when, trying to figure out different ways, at-home delivery and kind of,
which our own clients did a great job of.
Yeah, they did.
Our
Absolutely.
auto clients, they got right on that, and that's
and pushing that messaging out.
Yeah.
Right. And how do we helping them align that to what people are looking for? So now they're at home. Now they've got all the time in the world to browse on their phone and their computers and look at things, and people are getting stimulus checks, and it's starting to make them think, hey, maybe I should go do this, or go buy that car that now I've got a down payment for, or whatever it may be. And so trying to craft that messaging around the new environment that's around them. So I think they're all adapting really well. I mean, obviously nobody, they don't want to be in the situation that they're in, and they're not necessarily happy or content with it, but they've really taken on a quick understanding of how to position themselves in the new norm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think an example of this is, Volvo. They came out, they had a webinar with ClickZ, and they actually discussed their marketing plan, what they did. And so based on the pre-virus forecast, Volvo decided to cut all media spend for April and May except for paid search.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, all media spend except for paid search.
And why is that?
Because it's based on consumer intent. So when someone searches for something, it's right there. So I think just that in and of itself is crazy.
Sure.
And I think it really adds validity
Sure.
to the whole aspect of paid search.
They're really looking for, it's always been one of those tactics where you can look at a direct ROI, a direct results marketing effort of this money spent here
absolutely
resulted in this. We had this many, obviously from high level clicks and impressions. Okay, what did they do when they came to our website? All right, how many did we convert from there? And what did they do? So there's so many other things in the marketing world that you just you can't follow that trail to understand where those dollars are going. Yeah. So that proves the point more than ever that you number one, you don't want to take away your paid advertising dollars, but or two, it's one of the best marketing strategies that you can do, because you can track all of that, right?
Yeah.
And
in
so
real time.
In real time, and take it back to the C-suite and your management and ownership and whatever else it may be, and say, well, look, this is why we should spend the money. Yeah. Because it's resulting in this.
And it's working.
Right? Yeah. So that's really cool that they're doing that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then just back even on like the Google aspect, I mean, within paid search, that's Volvo's a well-known brand, so they're going to come up from a consumer standpoint. They might be more willing to click on that, knowing it's verified, knowing that, like we just talked about, knowing that they have authority to be posting these ads. And when you put in your contact form, it's not just going to a random organization. But back on Volvo, so they actually practice the crisis growth recovery model, like we talked about in the previous episode, which I thought was awesome. So their first kind of step was to take inventory. They really looked at all the Volvo dealerships across the country and found out that majority of them had to close. So from there, they kind of figured out what they needed to do. They took inventory. Their second step was they reviewed messaging, like you just said, and adjusted it, made sure that car delivery, if dealerships were able to offer that, that they were making sure that their contact, that people were able to still get in touch with the dealerships, even if they were close, things like that. The third was capture demand with search marketing, which I thought so important, just like we just talked about. But also, as you mentioned, stimulus checks. There are people that are still looking for cars, and that's where they're going to go to look for them. They're going to look on Google. Right. So that was their third thing. So after they assessed everything, they kind of went to, all right, let's start acting upon it. And then the fourth is take note of changing search behavior and trends and tailor content accordingly. So making sure, kind of monitoring that and making sure that they are reassessing and going back through that if they need to change anything.
That's really cool. So we talked about this a couple episodes ago with the crisis recovery growth model, CRG, and so they went through the crisis phase, adjusting all their messaging, like you said, and just kind of stop the bleeding and fix things and make sure everything needs to be where it is, going through that crisis phase. Recovery, looking at the messaging, making sure that all of that is done appropriately, and then really quickly moving into that growth phase of capturing the demand, the new demand that is now coming from search marketing. So that's really cool to see them take that initiative and align really the same ideology and framework that we went over a couple of weeks ago. Not saying they got that from us whatsoever, but it's cool to see a company like that follow a very similar structure and be successful with it too.
And coming out, really with this new normal. And they mentioned that this second recovery phase, so really coming back, making sure that everything is in place, that they have tailored their messaging, is expected for May, June, and then July through December is their third phase. So I think that's also important to note that this isn't a 3-month thing. This isn't one boom, 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 that it's going to take some time. The market needs to adjust. Everyone needs to adjust. And just make note as a business that it's not the end. There's light at the end of the tunnel, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it may take a little bit of time.
Yep, that it is. Very cool. Well, that wraps up our headlines for this week, and we are in part 3 of we're going to move into part 3 of our social media marketing series, which goes into just the 4 different aspects of social media marketing, making sure that everybody understands all the different nuances of how to approach it and how to be successful with it, because there's it's one of the things that we probably see the most frustration with out of just general marketing strategies and how to be successful with it from a business standpoint. So the four different aspects: social listening, we went over that a couple weeks ago, and social influencing was our last one. And then today we're going to focus on social networking. So and then next week we'll finish up the series with social selling. So just to recap: social listening, monitoring and responding to customer service and reputation management issues on the social web. That's just the general listening to what is your audience saying. What do they want from you, right? If you just listen, you can adapt to your messaging and your content. Social influencing, establishing authority on the social web, often through the distribution and sharing of valuable content. So making sure that the content that you are generating is really quality content. It's exactly what they're looking for. And this week, social networking, finding and associating with authoritative and influential individuals and brands on the social web. So finding and associating authoritative and influential individuals and brands. We see this quite a bit. I think everybody's seen it in some capacity. Building up that network, that really kind of public relations side of your business, where to help you amplify your marketing messaging. So interacting with people on social media in any way, shape, or form that you can to build your audience. And that is really where you can help to bring in, finding and associating with, different influential people that are in your same industry. And that takes some time. That really takes a lot of time. Actually, Gary Vee harps on this a lot about, are you going to put in the time to, talk to, comment and share and do all these different things with anybody that's in the same industry or vertical that you're in? Are you going to take the time? I think he always says 8, 10, 12 hours a day of just nonstop engaging, right? And it works. It really does work. It's just a matter of who, are you going to put that time in? And it's difficult, I think, from a lot of businesses to obviously, number one, find the time to be able to do that, but to understand what that's going to look like on the back end. Okay, I've put all this effort in. What am I going to get out of this by doing it? So you're building up that audience as a whole. It takes time, and then you can produce that quality content to distribute to them. So you're building up by just kind of, it's almost like physically networking locally, right? And
it's just like traditional PR, just literally just like you said, in a digital space. So the exact same, just using these avenues, traditional media, really similar. I just keep thinking of LinkedIn. I mean, making sure that you're getting on their connections, and then your brand. So we talked about last week how social influencing was all about distributing your own content. So making sure that it was the authoritative podcast videos to establish authenticity. So with social networking, you really want to take this quality content, and connect it with others. So share your brand's content with your audience. Make sure that you're engaging. Make sure that you're commenting on their site. It might be like, oh, check out this latest podcast we did. We mentioned y'all or something like that. So it's just really similar to traditional PR, just in the digital world.
Yep, definitely. For businesses using social networking to reach out to different brands and businesses that are important to your organization on social media. That can be anything like journalists, bloggers, podcasters, like you had just said, different print publication, radio stations, other agencies, any business that has a strong social media presence that you can connect with and just, again, interact with them, right? And the people that are also interacting with them, they're going to see you doing that. They're going to say, hey, who's this guy, right? And they're going to click on that profile, and they're going to go look at him. They're going to check him out. And if you've got quality content on your page and on your feed, that person's more than likely going to want to follow you too, because they're already interested in where they originally found you, which is the same content, or similar content. So it's just taking that time and understanding who to interact with, doing the research. I mean, you can open up Instagram and hit the search button and, type in all kinds of things that are related to your business and find just an endless amount of of content out there. So if people need help doing that, most agencies are really well versed in that and figuring out exactly how to do it. And at least if you don't really have the budget to pay an agency to do that for you, you can at least find somebody that will help you lay out a strategic plan of how to do it and who to look for and just kind of that process, so you're not going into it blindly.
Absolutely. And it's just really social networking. It just allows you to really elevate your business to the next level. It's a high impact activity. It takes a lot of work, just like you said, 10, 12 hours a day, but your business will come out better on the other end.
According to Gary Vee, 10 to 12 hours a day.
Yeah, well, I need 10 to 12 hours a day. Right. But there are, just like you said, there are tools available to help you identify key players. There are paid tools like GroupHigh and Incubee that allow you to track down bloggers. And then there are also free tools like Clout.com or CredHome that are social scoring platforms. So they kind of score social media sites or accounts, and tell you how influential people are around certain topics. But just like you said, if you can't pay anyone, you can't really kind of figure anything that out, get on the Explorer, kind of do your research, Google it. I mean, look through and just see the most influential bloggers or podcasts that come up. Also not kind of discrediting radio stations and newspapers. I think that's also really important. They have social media channels. Oh, yeah. They are very heavily on social media, all major news platforms. So getting on there, engaging with them consistently, even on the local level for your public relations can be just absolutely so beneficial for your business in the long run.
They've had to. I'm really glad you said that. I've seen so many different media companies, a lot of radio related, get into the social media world, and they really had to. They didn't have a choice. Yeah. But then they started distributing their content that way too, and it was like, oh wait, I've got a digital platform here too. Exactly. If I just build up my audience on social media, I'm already creating content, through the different shows and whatnot, and just distributing it differently and interacting with them differently. So they typically by this time have enough, to your point, enough of a following that they are a great way to
resource
interact from a local aspect, just trying to build that overall social networking. So that's everything that we have for social networking, part 3 of understanding social media marketing as a whole, building influence on social media channels, exactly how to do that. Like I said, we're 3 down of 4. Our last one next week is going to be on social selling, generating leads and sales from the audience that you've built and the content that you've created. Okay, well, how do we turn that into money? So I'm excited to talk about that one. I think that's obviously the end goal of most social media marketing efforts. Yep. So we will get into that one next week. We'll have a bunch of new headlines for you, and we look forward to talking with you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.